Hello, and good evening, afternoon, or morning. We have people coming here from all over the world, so welcome. I am Angela McCrae, founder of Springfield Astrology, student of the universe, and a member of the board of directors for the Cosmobiology Institute. It is my honor to welcome you all to this evening's event, hosted by the Cosmobiology Institute. As an introduction to the Institute, I would like to read you our mission statement. The Cosmobiology Institute is dedicated to the empirical verification of relationships between cosmic phenomena with organic life and to the practical application of these observations and discoveries. The term cosmobiology was introduced and defined extremely well by Reinhold Ebertin in the mid-20th century as a scientific discipline concerned with the possible correlations between the cosmos and organic life. It strives to understand the effects of cosmic rhythms and stellar motion on people, with all their potentials, dispositions, characters, and life changes. It also involves research on these correlations and effects as mirrored by the Earth's plant and animal life as a whole. In this endeavor, cosmobiology utilizes modern-day methods of scientific research, such as statistics, analysis, and computer programming. The Cosmobiology Institute contains the spirit of the investigations by Ebertin and others such as Johannes Kepler and John Addy. In this tradition, scientific principles and methods are applied to the study of the relationship of celestial motions with the experiences and behavior of humans and other living things. The Cosmobiology Institute is consistent with the emphasis in many modern professions on evidence-based practices and careful adherence to high academic standards and principles. Fundamental to this process is determining and evaluating levels of confidence, effect sizes, and other assessments of research results. The Cosmobiology Institute operates with the same technical and academic sophistication as excellent universities and research institutes. The focus is on discovery and innovation that meet with the standards of the world's finest educational and research institutions. Cutting-edge developments in research methods, data science, analytics, mathematical models, and physics are utilized to make discoveries and build applications. Rigorous testing and evaluation combined with the highest integrity, sincerity, and honesty in reporting findings places the Cosmobiology Institute at the forefront of groundbreaking technological advancements that can deliver practical applications and useful benefits in a wide range of disciplines. As a nonprofit organization dedicated to furthering scientific understanding and developing applications that improve the lives of people, The Cosmobiology Institute provides a range of services that are free or involve minimal cost, as well as services that can be further developed by private businesses and governmental agencies without intellectual property constraints. Open source software, training programs, and publications are some of the forms in which the Cosmobiology Institute provides these services. This evening, we will hear from some of the industry's top research minds in order to introduce you to the essence of evidence-based astrology in the 21st century. Please feel free to ask questions in the chat, and we will do our best to answer if time allows. First, I would like to welcome Santino Mancuso. Santino is the author of the book, The Astrology of Bipolar Disorder, and has made over 700 YouTube videos. The book and many of his other contributions are under his birth name, David Cochrane. He is also a founder and board member of the Cosmobiology Institute. Welcome. I think you need to unmute yourself.
There we go. I was muted. Thank you, Angela. Well, that very nice introduction to me is for the purpose of me to introduce you to Peter Neumann. So I'm going to introduce you to Peter. He's going to give our first presentation. And I'm going to introduce you to Peter by sharing with you a little bit about his education and the work he does. So first, his education. Peter attended Harvard University from 1950 to 1958. He received his doctorate degree at Harvard. In 1952, while he was studying at Harvard, he had a 2-hour breakfast with Albert Einstein. And one of the things that Peter shared with me about his meeting with Einstein is a golden rule is that when we build models and theories, make them as simple as possible, but not simpler than they need to be to explain the complex behavior that you're looking at. Sounds obvious, but it seems like every day I'm using this rule in the research that I do. Anyway, it's rather extraordinary that he had that 2-hour meeting with Einstein. So following his 8 years at Harvard, Peter received a Fulbright scholarship to study in Germany. He received a second doctorate degree from Darmstadt University in Germany. But nevertheless, despite his 2 PhDs, Peter will tell you that a doctorate degree does not guarantee that a person is brilliant. What is even more impressive is what they do, and Peter's achievements in computer science and computer technology are simply extraordinary. When the United States government needs a report on cybersecurity for the military, for governmental operations, for commercial activities, Peter is often at the forefront, developing and directing cutting-edge hardware and software that can be used in the next generation of information systems. He is also often involved in writing the reports that are submitted to the US government agencies. In short, Peter is widely recognized for his brilliant contributions in the world of high technology. He also sees the potential of some forms of astrology to be validated and improved to create an evidence-based form of astrology. This evidence-based form of astrology, if properly developed, will provide valuable services to humanity. The potential of an evidence-based astrology is too important to be ignored. Therefore, Peter is dedicating time, energy, also financial resources for this quest to make discoveries that are far outside the scope of what science and psychology currently understand about the universe we live in. So I am honored to introduce to you Peter G. Neumann. So Peter, you can unmute. Are you still muted, Peter?
Now I'm okay.
Thank
All
you.
right.
There we go.
Thank you, Santino. That was much too long of an introduction, but I'll try to be brief. My professional background in computer science really begins with the summer of 1953, 71 years ago, when I had a programming position for the US Navy. My commitment to evidence-based research goes way back to my doctorate work in the 50s. And in the last period, I've spent 15 years on one project, which is now coming to fruition. Over 30 years dedicated to three major clean slate, trustworthy computer system developments. That means clean slate means that if you were to start all over again, what would you do differently? And you figure out that you'd like to do something that didn't work the last time you tried it. And I've been successful at that in these three different occasions. Our current computer system is probably the most principled system ever developed. And it has, it's called Cheri, or in French, Cheri, C-H-E-R-I. And it's an effort between SRI and the University of Cambridge. SRI used to be Stanford Research long ago. And I have been there since 1971, and almost all of the research I've done is in one way or another evidence-based. What we've done in the Cheri project is really to break new ground in hardware, software. Any C program that runs on Microsoft. Microsoft claimed that 70 to 80% of their security problems would vanish if they ran it on our hardware, which would prevent them from doing the bad things that they do. In addition, we have formal mathematical logical proofs that are specifications for the commercial version of this called Cheri ARM Morello. Actually satisfies critical security properties. That's something that never happened before and is an example of, if you will, extreme evidence-based research. I don't expect the Cosmobiology Institute to go and do that kind of theory and formal proof, but I think the essence is roughly the same. Serious evidence-based research with open publications and detailed documentation, which would allow other researchers to replicate the same or similar results with their own analytics. My background for helping found the Cosmobiology Research Institute really began over 50 years ago, when I had many long discussions with a very, very dear friend, Helene Cushman-Woodman, who was a disciple of Reinhold Ebertin. And for most of her professional life, she actually studied Egyptian, Chinese, Vedic systems, and intuitively, without realizing that this was sort of evidence-based research, tried to practice exactly what fit the best with retrogression in principle. So that was an inspiration to me to be involved in the institute which we've created, and to rededicate the idea of evidence-based research to this particular field, which I believe is probably the most important thing that could ever happen to the field. So we'll see if I've overthought the thing, and we'll see how it goes. But that's it for me, and I'll go on mute.
Thank you, Peter. Santino, please continue with your presentation. Obviously, Peter, you're instrumental to this institute, and we are very, very grateful for your involvement. You are muted. It wouldn't be a meeting without it, so.
Okay.
There you go.
Okay, we're now going to have a series of presentations by researchers. I will give the first one. I'm going to share with you my contributions to evidence-based astrology. So I have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to share my PowerPoint. Share. Okay, everyone can see that? We're all good? Okay, I am making 4 contributions to evidence-based astrology. Number 1, tools and resources for research. If you're going to do research, you have to have some kind of software, some kind of tools to analyze the data. You need to have data. So one thing that I'm involved in is creating the tools for people to conduct research. And I've got it broken into 3 sections, and I will go into detail. I just want to give you first an overview of the general kinds of contributions that I've made. Developing tools and resources is number 1. Number 2, conducting research. And I've been involved in dozens of research projects. Some are collaborations with other researchers, some that I do by myself. I will list some of the research projects that I've been involved in. Third thing that I do is education. So spreading the news about how research is done, what the issues are. For example, I've made hundreds of tutorial videos specifically on astrological research, including issues with research methods, advantages, disadvantages, how to analyze the results, and the specific research projects. And the fourth thing is building a research community. Here we are, Cosmobiology Institute is my current way of building a community, because research always requires a community of people to peer review each other, to interact. And there are other research communities as well. I'm going to go through each of these 4 points quickly, and then I'll be done. So let's talk about the first point of tools and resources, specifically introducing new research designs and new research tools. Here's just an example. I could give many, many examples. Recently, over the last 10 to 15 years, in genetics research, they've started using extreme case sampling, and they've made some breakthrough discoveries using extreme case sampling. For example, they've discovered genes that are associated with obesity. I was beginning to use extreme case sampling, noticed that they're doing the same thing in genetics, read the papers. I wrote to the main author of a very important paper. That author wrote back, and we discussed the application of extreme case sampling for astrology research, similar to what's being done in genetics research. I got some very helpful information and a big support confirmation that yes, extreme case sampling can be important in astrology research. So this is an example of looking at developments in research methods in different disciplines, what can be useful. So at the bottom here is one of these important papers, an example of what kinds of research can we do, what's available. Just like any field in academia, things are evolving, changing, and developing. Another part of providing tools and resources is improving our understanding of the research designs. So recently, I developed an evidence-based astrology pyramid. Medicine, psychology, they all have what are called evidence-based pyramids. And I made one for astrology, and on the right is the pyramid that I made for astrology. This is available on YouTube, and I've been discussing it with some other researchers. So if you do not have an evidence-based pyramid for your discipline, you really cannot initiate the fundamentals of an evidence-based practice. There are a lot of details involved. So another thing I'm involved in is developing this infrastructure of ideas and concepts to develop the evidence-based astrology. There's a lot to it. The third thing that I'm doing with developing tools and resources for research is developing software and databases. Currently, what I'm excited about is to develop astrology research software that is, I've got 3 bullet points here, very powerful, free is good, and versatile. So we want research that can do things like data visualization, data mining, as well as your standard statistical tests. And there is a software program called R, if any of you researchers, you already know about it. And R is extraordinarily powerful, flexible, and free. And I'm developing what are called R scripts that can be used by anybody and making those scripts freely available. So this is an example of developing the tools. And as a nonprofit institute, Cosmobiology Institute is here to serve the community for the greater good. And this is very exciting part of developing the tools and resources. Now, to go on to point number 2, conducting research. I listed here a long list of some of the research that I've done, reanalyzing Gauquelin data, extroversion, introversion research, gold prices, baseball batting performance, athletic performance, rock and roll musicians, marriage compatibility, accidents, bipolar disorder, etc. So lots of different research projects that I've been involved in. I just listed them, let you know in this introductory lecture what some of the people involved are doing. These are the kinds of things that I've been doing in research. The third point I made about what I'm contributing is education. So for example, I've made hundreds of tutorial videos on research, a total of 700 videos, about 200 on research, and constantly working on it. In about 2 weeks, I'll release an improved version of this index with new programs for studying research methods and research projects that have been done. And fourth is research community. And here we are at Cosmobiology Institute. I'm so excited that we're here with so many exceptional researchers and so many people attending. So I have here at the bottom of my last slide, I hope that many of you will contribute to this exciting, revolutionary, evidence-based astrology movement, because the Cosmobiology Institute is us. It's a nonprofit. It's all about us getting together. We're just the directors and initiators of it. We want to all work together and participate. That's it. That's what I wanted to share with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Paul Westran. He has conducted extensive research on the times that romantic couples and married couples meet. His groundbreaking research is described in his book, When Stars Collide. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you, Angela. Good day, everyone. I'm talking to you from the Perth Hills in Kalamunda in Western Australia today, so it's morning for me. I've spent 27 years on the same evidence-based research, which means that I dropped on some important variables fairly early in my research. It took me around about 22 years to take these variables from discovery to establishment, if you like, via a correlation article. And that's around about 22,000 hours of research. If we deconstruct that, that's somewhere in the region of around about $100,000 per variable. So effectively, quite a lot more than probably people thought back in the 1980s when I started my astrological journey. It was possibly thought that it was going to be either too hard or too easy to do this. So effectively, I've since started to look at other potential variables, but effectively spending 27 years on the same experiment is something that I think it was perhaps not thought possible in astrology at one time. I once met an astrological researcher who said the longest he'd spent on an experiment is an afternoon. And so I'm quite happy that this is the way that things have worked out for me. But I understand that finding these variables is the hardest part of evidence-based astrological research. So my journey began in the 80s. And back then we were reeling from a scandal called Star Baby. And there was a lot of belief that astrology would be accepted back into academia back in the 1970s, particularly because of Addy and Gauquelin. But we found that our colleagues in science were not quite as perhaps perhaps upfront as they could have been. And there were a number of articles produced during that time that were quite critical of astrology and the belief that astrology is pseudoscience. Now, history, if we delve into history, we can see that the reason why they were able to call astrology pseudoscience is because there's been literally no investment whatsoever in it in the past 360 years. In fact, the reason there hasn't been any investment is because it was ejected from academia probably back in the year 1666. And so we can actually see that effectively its development stopped around about that time. And it's been captured in amber ever since then, really. Anyway, I'll talk about my experiment, but I'll just give you some background about how it came about first. I started to learn astrology in isolation in about 1985, which means I didn't have a teacher. So I learned it myself from books. One of these books was a book called How to Rectify a Birth Chart by Laurie Effrin. And in it, there's possibly one paragraph which has completely changed my life. And that is that transits happen to you, progressions change you from the inside. As an impressionable student, I thought, hey, that's really important. And there'll be some books about this that I'll be able to read in the future that focus on that, particularly from the point of view of synastry. So I thought that that might be an established thing, but it turned out it wasn't. Now, the one thing about progressions is the precision that we apply to them. So we apply what we would say are more narrow orbs in astrology to progressions than we do to natal astrology. So that also, being an impressionable person, that pricked my conscience, and I thought maybe there's something in there that I need to delve into and look at more closely. Because if this is precision and this is imprecision, perhaps the precise chart is going to be the one that I'm going to get experimental outcomes from. And so from that, I established my experiments. Now, I went on a little journey over the next 10 years when there's a lot of skepticism in the world, particularly from people like Richard Dawkins. And it kind of inspired me, to be honest. The book Unweaving the Rainbow, and an article, I think it was in The Independent on Sunday in Britain in about 1996. He was essentially trying to criminalize astrologers. I was incensed by that. And so I went on another journey, if you like, and I went on this journey, and effectively I was looking at this flat 2D horoscope and thinking, this is something not quite right with this. It needs to be more dimensions to it. It's about time. And in real life, we have predecessors. So we have predecessor events that cause more events, that cause more events, that cause more events. And we don't really see that in astrology unless we look at it as a 4D horoscope. So essentially, when I met my wife in 1997, I just put together by hand a quad wheel, and I noticed that there was a trine between Venus in the progress charts. And I thought, there might be something in this. So that essentially started my study. And over the next 4 years, I was kind of like gathering bits of data here and there to see whether or not I could see anything that was interesting. And I did. So over the 4 years after that, I started gathering data in a particular way. At the time, I was a crime analyst, or I'd just finished being a crime analyst, and I understood criminal groups analysis, where we look at organized crime. And effectively, what you're looking at is you're trying to connect everyone in a cohort or a group. And that's really, really quite important in this sort of study, because you need to basically follow the lead where it takes you. And if it's Frank Sinatra to Ava Gardner, and Ava Gardner to Mario Cabré and all the bullfighters that she'd had relationships with, and all the relationships Frank Sinatra had with all the other people that he'd ever had a relationship with, you get quite a big cohort, quite a big group. But what it does is it means that you're not cherry picking, and you're not cherry picking the data. You're actually selecting data that is logically grouped, and you can't be accused of cherry picking the result, which in effect is very hard in this sort of work. So that's the way I approached it. And effectively, it was a counting aspects exercise. But I was not counting aspects just between natal charts. It was between natal to natal, natal to progress to natal, and progress to progress. So we had 4 sets of variables to collect for every single chart. So when you're looking at, in my case, I gathered 1,300 of these relationships and looked and followed the data on every one of them. And you're looking at hundreds of thousands of variables. I got results for Sun, Venus, trines, conjunctions, and oppositions in very uniform ways. So basically, in all of those 4 categories, but really for nothing else, apart from a couple of Venus, Mars variables. So effectively, we got, excuse me, it was a manual exercise for me. I was doing this by hand, excuse me. We didn't have software that could calculate it in those days. I could use Kepler to do a single chart at a time, because you could do that. It was actually quicker for me to do it by hand and eye, which is, I've got 4 planets in Virgo and the ascendant in Virgo, so that's not too much of a problem for someone like me. I understand that that probably wouldn't be something that every other researcher would choose. So anyway, I found these peaks. I published a book called When Stars Collide in 2006, which told the story and introduced a new graph called a collision graph. And this subject is now called progressed synastry. But I kept gathering the data. I kept gathering data after that. Then we were introduced to skeptics. So Messrs. Dean, Smith, Nias, and Mather asked to look at my results. And so in about 2014, I presented all my data to the skeptics. And they absolutely tore it apart in that they took out most of it and then commented on about a third of the data. It was not a very fair exercise and not a great outcome for them or us. But effectively, they hadn't got rid of all the significance. They got rid of 1 out of 3, if you like. So it was actually.
Sorry, Paul.
So
I hate to stop you on that part, because we are trying to get through things, but it is absolutely fascinating. I'm really interested in your book. Thank you for sharing that. When we kind of wrap up, I do have a couple questions that I think will let you finish what you're speaking.
Thank you.
I'm just going to move. Thank you very much.
Angela.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Paul. So I would like to introduce Christopher Benton. Christopher has a PhD in mathematics. A paper on one of his comprehensive research studies was recently published in Correlation magazine. Welcome, Christopher.
Thank you, and hello from Scottsdale, Arizona. Give me a minute to just share my screen here. Hold on. And I've got to get a couple of panels out of the way so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, I think I'm ready. Can you see my screen?
We can, thank you.
Good. All right. Well, in addition to having taught community college mathematics for about almost 40 years, I also worked for 6 years as Director of Institutional Effectiveness and Research. And for those who have a background in institutional effectiveness, you know that it's, we like to frame things in terms of vision statements and mission statements, long-term goals, annual objectives, assessments of those objectives, and then very important, the actions to be taken if we don't meet all of our annual objectives. So I'm framing my activities that way. And so I'll start with my vision statement. You know, you can do this for both institutions, but you can also do it on an individual level. So when it comes to astrology, my vision is to live in a world where astrology is understood both scientifically and experientially as a way to live in harmony with the cosmos around us. My mission is to help bring about this vision through the utilization of mathematical and statistical skills. My long-term goals are 1, to review current literature and catalog what we currently know. 2, to engage in statistical analysis. 3, engage in the mathematical analysis of technical aspects of astrology. And 4, to work with both the astrological and scientific community. Now, my annual objectives right now are to, one, read and review past statistical studies, do statistical research, and do rigorous mathematical proofs for principles of harmonic astrology, and also to engage with peers. And as far as my assessment goes, I've read several studies, and I've also peer reviewed some studies for Correlation Magazine, which publishes statistical studies on astrology. Two, I've had 2 papers published in Correlation, and I have a third one in the works. The first 2 I published were concerned with developing an astrological signature for male to female transgender people. The one which I'm working on now, it has to do with conditions that favor heart attacks and heart disease. I'm basically taking a result that a researcher in Canada found and then dismissed as a statistical artifact, but I've replicated the result on a different set of data. And I've also dug deeper into the data and concluded that the heart attacks are not due to the astrological condition that the original researchers saw, but something a little bit different. And so it's very interesting. And let's see, the third thing I'm doing here, rigorous mathematical proofs and models for harmonic astrology are in progress. This is a thing I'm working on, which will probably get the least amount of notice because I know there aren't that many people out there who love to just sit down and read through rigorous mathematical proofs about things in the way that I do, or maybe in the way that a couple of other participants here do. Nonetheless, I think this work is extremely important because when you develop a really good mathematical model for something, it not only sheds a lot of light on what's really going on, but it helps you understand what else is true. Usually start off proving those things which are obvious and probably already known to a lot of people working on harmonic or vibrational astrology, but you wind up discovering and proving things which perhaps aren't so obvious. And then the fourth thing I'm doing here is conferences and Zoom meetings are being attended. So all my objectives now get a good assessment. So as far as actions taken, no corrections need to be made. I just continue with the current objectives. And notice that when you set up this kind of framework, all of these things at the bottom, they feed into what's up above, ultimately helping to realize the vision. And here's my last slide. I'll go through this quickly. You can also do, either for an institution or for yourself at any time, what we call a SWOT analysis. And SWOT is just an acronym that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. For myself, my strengths are that I've got a good knowledge of Western astrology, statistics, and advanced mathematics. My weaknesses, well, my skills in the software program are fair, but they could be better. You know, I'm nowhere near as good an R as Santino is. And of course, there are always more statistical techniques to master. Opportunities, well, the internet has made it much easier to gain knowledge and collaborate with peers around the world. And other scientific disciplines are also discovering astrological effects. And with the internet, it's a great opportunity to discover those things and collaborate with others. The threats, though, well, we've got many non-astrologers that still dismiss astrology out of hand. Scientists who are non-astrologers. That's a threat. Many of the available large databases are still incomplete. There are databases out there with tens of thousands of horoscopes, and yet there's still gaps in those databases, and those gaps can result in an unintended bias of one sort or another. And lastly, a threat is that many of my fellow astrologers still lack the quantitative skills needed to make astrology a recognized scientific discipline. Over the past 100 years, there's been tremendous development of psychological astrology. And I think there are many astrologers out there who are really good counselors and are helping lots and lots of people. But not so many of them have the kind of quantitative skills we need to make astrology a scientific discipline. And we need more people with those skills, because those who do have a good background in statistics and mathematics, we need to stand on their shoulders. We need their help also. So that's the end of my presentation. So let me stop sharing my screen real quickly.
Thank you, Christopher. There's some definite feedback in the chat that people love the SWOT analysis. So I think that is fascinating. I look forward to, hopefully we can get your slides and be able to email those out to everyone as well.
No problem.
Perfect. Okay, I would like to now introduce Glenn Mitchell. Glenn holds a PhD in political science with a specialization in statistical research methodology. He has been a practicing data scientist for more than 30 years, with many peer-reviewed empirical research articles, receiving more than 2,000 citations. Thank you, Mitch. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me go ahead and share my PowerPoint presentation. So far, no hitches. Go ahead. There it is. I don't think I have. Yeah, I don't. Great. Because we only have like 6 or 7 minutes, and I'm going to forego the usual academic pleasure of burnishing my credentials. You've already heard enough. My current project, and it's a long-term project, is to apply the principles of the scientific method to astrological research. When I was in graduate school, one of my mentors, Peter Snow, I mentioned to him that I thought that astrology was testable empirically, at least many of the facets of it, and he agreed. And that's been my mission since. I've been an astrologer since 1982. So I follow the exact same steps in my astrological research that I have applied to my academic research on electrobehavior, war and peace, epidemiology, gerontology, and health services. The last 25 years being health service research, epidemiology. The basic requirements for my research, and that I think are critical to applying the scientific method, is one, in my department in graduate school anyways, as a behavioral social scientist, research needs to be theory driven. Correlations alone are insufficient to establish causality. We need theory in order to make the causal links. As a time series analyst, particularly as a Box-Jenkins time series analyst, time order also matters. It's critical. If X causes Y, then X has to precede Y in time, and we have to establish that. As an analyst, I find constants to be theoretically, analytically uninteresting, because we can't use them to explain variation, since they themselves are not variant. I like to use populations. That's feasible only when the population is small. The use of populations can be necessary for rare events, like a disease that only occurs in 1 in 100,000 people. We can't just use a small sample of 2,500 people. We won't find any. And then sampling. So for me, the focus has been on using probability samples whenever I can to draw the inferences from samples to populations using statistical theory. We can make other kinds of assumptions, but if we're going to use statistical theory, then we need to go from samples, and those samples have to have specifiable sampling distributions with well-known characteristics, i.e., we have to be able to apply calculus to them. my research is focusing on both mass murderers and serial killers. So mass murderers are those people who have killed more than one person within a short period of time. Doesn't have to be the same day, but generally within a day or two or three. Would be how the literature, the academic literature on criminal justice would define it. So I am extracting all of the mass murderers from the ASTRO databank. Serial killers, they kill people, multiple people, over an extended period of time, typically over months or years. And I'm extracting all of the serial killers from the ASTRO databank. So I'm starting with the populations, not samples. I'm also going to take 250 individuals that are randomly selected from the ASTRO databank who are not murderers. And I'm just going to use simple random sampling. And that's necessary to conclude which set of astrological markers distinguish mass murderers and serial killers from non-murderers. The sampling, the ASTRO databank is not a probability sample. It is an elaborate convenience sample. People decided whose name, who they thought were notables, get their birth information and send it in. So I cannot generalize from the ASTRO databank data to all serial killers, to all mass murderers, nor to all individuals. Just can't do that. So this research is what I would call an elaborate pilot study. It's also a prototype that I hope astrologers will use to do research in the future. The theory, my theory, the astrological theory is derived from Witte, Eberton, Mancuso, Brummond, Westcott. So the social theory is my own, based on my own years of study as a behavioral social science, backed up with citations from the existing literature. So the social markers that I'm going to be looking at include age, gender, race, whether they were an orphan, whether they were abused physically, whether they were abused sexually, their relation to the victims, whether or not they were gay. The victim markers are male, female, children, aged, prostitutes. The methodology markers are shootings, stabbings, bludgeoning, strangulation, poison. The special circumstances markers are school, rape, were they beaten, the victims tortured, dismembered. My research relies heavily on dials, midpoints, and vibrational astrology, harmonic astrology, Addy, Skinner, etc. Cosmobiology decided to forego dials, and I've had many conversations with Oliver Kimmel. I still find dials to be extremely helpful, and particularly for this research, because I need to be able to see at a glance hard aspects, because that's what my focus is on, is the hard aspects with particular patterns between the planets in charts. And so I have, for a given individual, I produce dials for the sun, the moon, the ascendant, etc. So there are about 15. No, there's more than that, because I also include asteroids, 10 asteroids, 10 or 11 asteroids. So they're more like 25 charts. And I have them for the natal. I have them for the transits. I have them for secondary progressions and for the combination of transits and secondary progressions. So on a given individual, I'm compiling about 100 pages of information in an individual PDF for each individual. So that's why I'm limiting my sample, my control sample, to 250. I want to complete this before I expire from this planet. So as I mentioned, the research relies heavily on midpoint analysis. That's what dials do. They help you very graphically see midpoints, and particularly midpoints to hard aspects. And then again, as I say, on harmonic aspects, particularly the fourth harmonic, the 16th, etc. So that's what I'm working on. Did I get there in 6 or 7 minutes?
You
Angela?
did. Great job.
All right.
Also,
Sorry
some
if I spoke too fast.
no, perfect. Some very heavy work you've been kind of diving into, though. So we look forward to taking a look a little bit more. And we do have your slides that we'll be sending out too. So we'll have some of that information as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
I would like to introduce Gisele Terry. Gisele is an astrologer and marriage and family therapist in Los Angeles. She has done evidence-based research with Santino Mancuso using vibrational astrology with mental health disorders and in particular with bipolar disorder. Welcome, Gisele.
Thank you, Angela, and hello to everyone. So I'd like to start with the year 2021, because that was the year that Santino and I presented the fourth phase of a 3-year study, statistical research study in bipolar disorder. And in the process of doing that study, we were able to demonstrate statistical significance with a model that we built for bipolar disorder, which we tested over and over again, both with the test database that we used to build the model and with an additional database as well. So what I want to go through right now are just the steps that we took to build the model that gave us these results. It started in 2019 with, I would say, curiosity. Santino and I were interested in knowing what kinds of patterns would emerge in the charts of 25 of my patients who had a range of mental illnesses, they had depression, anxiety, PTSD, addiction, bipolar disorder. Specifically, what we wanted to find out is, might people who had the same diagnosis also have similar or the same astrological patterns? It was so interesting. We actually did find that people with the same diagnosis had similar patterns. But the important thing about this phase 1, is that this was the case study analysis. At this point, there was no hypothesis, there was no theory to try to fit anything into, and there was no intention to study bipolar disorder. So it was just looking at cases and analyzing them and obtaining information that did give us fertile ideas for a direction that we might choose to go further in. Later in 2019, I thought about it. I thought about bipolar disorder, and it occurred to me that bipolar disorder would be such an ideal disorder to study through vibrational astrology. And the reason is this, and some of you may already know, bipolar disorder is a mood disorder, and it fluctuates between very extreme, definable moods. Even if it's a spectrum disorder, there are variations, but you can define the moods with specific symptoms that to me felt absolutely translatable into aspect patterns in vibrational astrology and the harmonics that might go with them, vibrations rather than might go with them. So I presented this to Santino, and we began the second phase of our research, that being exploratory research. In the serious program, there is a section devoted to exploratory research. Santino and I already, by this time, expected what we might see, because we already knew from the case study analysis, for example, that my patients who were very depressed had combinations of Moon Saturn and especially Moon Saturn Pluto. This is just an example. But Moon Saturn Pluto, for example, appearing in quite a number of charts, is a severe depression. So, and that the seventh vibration might be the appropriate vibration for explaining and containing this quality of internal, introspective, major depression. So that is what we anticipated. We also anticipated that we're going to see some aspects related to mania, Jupiter, Uranus, Neptune. So we created sampling database. We took some people from the Cochrane database who were part of the bipolar database, 972 people, but we just took a few of them. We took some from my own 25 patients that we did the charts for. We took some from other people in none of the Cochrane databases, but who had A ratings for birth data. We entered them all in, and we watched to see what was going to rise to the top. And in almost all the cases that I was projecting, and Santino also, you know, there were some vibrations that didn't make the mark. Not vibration 19 just got tossed. But it was very clear in our sampling that vibration 7 with Saturn prominent, vibration 8 with Saturn aspects dominant, vibration 11 for the instability of mania, and vibration 13 for the megalomania, the grandiosity that comes with mania, many other impulse driven, reckless behavior. There are lots of other mood states. And from there, Santino began to create an astro signature. And when he did, it comprised 6 components. I actually just told you almost all the 6. And if you're interested, we can provide you with all the details of that astro signature, the 6 components in 7, 8, 11, and 13. Saturn in the 8, these are the lead planets. Jupiter, Uranus for the mania in 11, Jupiter in 11, and 13 for the grandiosity. And Sun, Moon, and Leo. And I'm just going to say this. If any of you have the aspects that we found in our astro signature that correlates with bipolar disorder, it does not mean you have bipolar disorder. It's the way the whole thing interrelates. It's the way everything interrelates. And in bipolar disorder, what would ordinarily be expressed in a healthy way is expressed in a dysfunctional way. So when you hear me say that the 6th component was a Sun, Moon in Leo, we're talking about identity confusion, which I think if you think about bipolar disorder, there's no stable sense of identity. This is the astro signature. We entered into the Cochrane database, 972 people who were diagnosed with bipolar. Cochrane called it manic depression. It later became bipolar. We tested it in the Cochrane database. We tested it across umpteen control groups, randomized control groups, shuffled 1,000 times. We tested it against databases that were already in Cochrane databases of other mental illnesses. We tested it against other databases in David's Sirius program. And what we came up with, I mean, I'm talking about my feelings because David Santino knows this, was so mind-blowing, I couldn't believe it. I mean, we came up with results like just for example, I mean, something like, I couldn't even count the zeros for the p-value is 0.00000. T-values at the sigma level, close to 5. So anyway, my first result was, oh my God, we hit gold. It was like amazing. But thankfully, Santino sobered me up. Because, as we know, we cannot rely on the test data that we use to assume that that is the bipolar signature. It has to stand up against other databases with people diagnosed with bipolar disorder. So that was the goal. Would our astro signature generalize to other databases? Would it stand in its own, on its own, no matter what database we used of bipolar disorder patients? David found some corrections that needed to be made. I thought this was so interesting. We needed consistency and elegance. And Santino, with his eye for consistency and elegance, removed from the 7th vibration and multiples of 7 all the hard aspects, because 7 for depression is soft. So you could not have 2, 4 multiples of 7, 14, 28, like that. Those were all hard aspects. We needed the 3, the 6, the soft aspects, because the kind of depression and bipolar depression is soft. It isn't like solid. So we did that, eliminated those aspects. And in the 11th vibration, which symbolized the instability that comes with mania, we saw soft aspects. Santino saw the soft aspects, 11, 33, 66. That's not going to work because mania is not soft at all. So we had to retain multiples of 4 and 8, 2, 4, 8, the hard aspects, because it was the hard aspects that described the mania.
Gisele, I know that your work is fascinating. And if anybody hasn't read The Astrology of Bipolar Disorder, the book that you and Santino worked on together, it's amazing. And it also has a lot of references to how to do research in serious software program, which I think is very important, especially with this group who might be interested in doing more. That book has a lot of great information in it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yes. I would like to now introduce you to Vincent Godbout. Vincent is a mathematician, software developer, and astrology researcher. He has published 7 articles in the Correlation magazine. He is also on the board of directors of the Cosmobiology Institute. Welcome, Vincent.
Welcome. I'll share my screen first. Does it work?
It does. We can see it perfectly. Thank you.
Astrolinguistics. Good evening, everyone. A linguistic approach to astrology. In 2008, I created a probabilistic stock market model predicting the SP 500 using astrology, analyzing over 20,000 stock daily quotes and hundreds of astrological factors. Initially, this model using linear multiple regression predicted market trends successfully for a year, but it eventually failed. This led me to put research aside to focus on practical aspects of astrology, developing an astrological expert system in 2010, which was integrated 5 years later into the Mastro Expert software. This expert system helps interpret charts by treating astrological information in a new way. Mastro Expert system includes a corpus of thousands of keywords. This led to a linguistic approach to astrology, astrolinguistics. compiling interpretation from 25 prominent astrological authors, I created interpretation for thousands of combined factors, cross-referencing meanings of planets and signs with planets and aspects. Aberton's midpoint interpretation also were included. The system uses keywords from these factors as building blocks for its synthesis algorithm, assigning them scores based on their frequency in a chart. The more a word is repeated, the higher its score. The probabilistic rarity of getting a repeated message is thus a measure of significance. I first published this concept in Considerations Journal in 1988 to quantify significance using probability. The journal was edited by late Ken Gilman and my dear friend, late Axel Harvey. For each chart, the expert system generates a weighted list of words. Here's an example with Kepler chart. You see the list in order and weighted. The yellow, excuse me, in 2016, I saw the potential of the expert system for fundamental research. Here's some examples of my research. I sought to replicate Carlson's famous matching test, a key argument of the anti-astrologers. Automation was used to counter skeptics' claim that any truth in astrology could be attributed to human ESP, which academics takes more seriously than astrology. The research tested the accuracy of astrological keywords from natal charts against character trait keywords in biographies. A study with 73 notabilities published in correlation journals showed significant results. This success allowed further exploration of technical issues in astrology. For example, the significant results of the matching test disappears when the tropical zodiac is replaced by the sidereal zodiac. With this type of whole chart approach, we can evaluate the individual factors' quality by testing their impact on the test performance. Including, thus, this automated matching test was also able to assess the relevance of midpoint. Including midpoint interpretation enhances the matching effect, which is significantly improved when strong midpoint aspects are included and weak midpoint aspects are excluded. The yellow curve here indicates how much the model with strong midpoint aspects outperforms the other models. Astrologers often prioritize certain planets due to their perceived strength in natal chart. Planetary dominance is crucial for accurate interpretation. By comparing keywords from Astro Expert System with biographical keywords of 189 notabilities, we develop a protocol for determining planetary dominance by automating matches between birth charts and biographies, yielding highly significant results. This research was done with my friend Vital Corvon, astrologer and researcher. Here's an example with Kennedy of a comparison between astrological dominance in orange. Its dominant is Mars, followed by Venus and Mercury, and biographical dominance in blue. Good match. A replication with 61 independent biographies confirmed the robustness of the adjusted planetary dominance, APD model, achieving a significant success rate. A subsequent study, also published in Correlation, evaluated 12 established dominance methods. The APD model outperformed all of them in chart to biography matching. Astrolinguistics enables a new approach to research that relies on a kind of second-order regression based on keywords, reflecting human thinking more accurately than linear regression based on astrological factors. By using combinations of keywords corresponding to sets of astrological factors, this approach reflects human cognitive processes in line with astrological validity, introducing a new paradigm in research and interpretation. Through keywords, we implicitly use the underlying astrological factors. This facilitates subtle combination of factors and improves intuitive analysis as the computer handles complex astrolinguistic calculation, allowing astrologer to focus on higher level thinking. For example, analyzing a keyword such as suffering involves identifying their full astrological signature, understanding all the 135 potential factors associated with suffering. A lot of midpoints and aspects. Instead of using astrological factors directly, this method uses keywords derived from these sets of factors. Speaking of suffering, recently, I used multiple regression to study the relationship between secondary progressions and time of death. That's because of you, Paul Westran. You influenced me. No, this is not about predicting death, but rather assigning probabilities of death to certain dates. I compare a classical regression based on astrological factor to a second-order regression based on 72 keywords. The p-values of both models based on a sample of 450 subjects are extremely low, but this means nothing without replication. Replication with 200 independent data shows that the factor-based model is not significant, while replication with the word-based model gives a p-value 10 minus 16 for a replication. Here's the model, the words with their weights. You see that suffering is, with a weight of 40 in the regression, is a big player in the model. On its own, it is significant both in the sample, just by itself, just that word, significant in the sample here, and also in the replication of 200 subjects with that probability. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Vincent. That was very intriguing. Hopefully we can get your slides afterwards as well. I think there was a lot of really good information in there. I would like to now introduce you to Michele Love. Michele has conducted an extensive research study on eating disorders, and the results of her research were presented at the Vibrational Astrology Conference. She is also the president of the Cosmobiology Institute's board of directors. Welcome, Michele.
Thank you, everyone. This has been an exciting evening, and I just want to say that we here at the board of the Cosmobiology Institute, we are eternally grateful to have all of you join us here tonight for our official launch. And I am joining you all from Syracuse, New York. I'm only going to share briefly about the research that I conducted on eating disorders. And then I'd like to chat just for a few minutes about what the Cosmobiology Institute is and what it kind of means to me personally, as well as my hopes and dreams and wishes of where I'd like to see our astrological evidence-based research expand out into the world, into the future. So previously at the 2023 Vibrational Astrology Conference, I presented my research on eating disorders. I spent about a year and a half working on it, and it was an absolute labor of love. I had never done this type of research before, and I got pulled right into it. And this is not for the faint of a heart. For those of you who have done the research, it's countless hours of just racking your brain and sleepless nights. And but there's nothing I think more rewarding than when you get to the end of it And the research that I did was quantitative, it was exploratory, and it was assumptionless. So I had no preconceived notions diving into my research. And the interesting thing that happened as I was developing the model, halfway through, I was really fueled even more so to get to the bottom of this affliction. As someone very close to me, I had learned in the midst of my research, was really struggling and suffering from an eating disorder. And it was someone in my family. So it went straight to my heart, and I just really needed to get to the bottom of this. But the research was fascinating, as I said, and I used the exact model that Gisele spoke about with Santino that is listed in the book, The Astrology of Bipolar Disorder. So once again, if you have not read that, or if you're just new, getting into research, or you're curious about the method, that is a wonderful place to start. And the research on eating disorders was fascinating in that I did not go into it focusing on, strictly bulimia or strictly anorexia. I used, the models that were there, the data that was there, and then it kind of sorted itself out. And it was astounding to come up with such a highly statistical result. I had a t-value of 3.43. And the model actually included an asteroid, the asteroid Vesta. So it was fascinating to see Moon, Pluto, Vesta. I had some other variables that came into play with Mercury and Pluto, as well as Mars. I won't go into all of that, but and this was done in a vibrational way. So these patterns continue to repeat and show specifically in the 23rd vibration and multiples of 23. So it was just really exciting and fascinating to watch. Currently, I'm developing another model. I'm working on Black Moon Lilith. And this has been fascinating as well. If you are a researcher and you spend hours, I tend to, dump a billion hours into research, and then I'll back off and take a break for a couple of months, or, because my brain's fried and I'm trying to come back to center. But I've dove back into Black Moon Lilith. So I'm researching that, and I'm researching the true Black Moon Lilith, the oscillating. And in addition to that, now I'm into Black Moon Lilith, so now I have to look at the Priapus. So that's my current research that I'm working on, in addition to some other things within the Pleiades, because everyone's fascinated by the Pleiades, right? But with Black Moon Lilith, this is really curious and interesting too, and I may be ridiculously unpopular by the time this research is complete, because of the findings that I'm coming up with right now aren't what we typically always hear about Black Moon Lilith. So I'm excited to get to the bottom of that. So we all know, us as humans, we've all been captivated by the celestial sky, since the beginning of time. It's influenced our work, artists, poets, musicians, the entire species of humans. But here at the Cosmobiology Institute, we're exploring a new frontier. So this is a new frontier of knowledge by combining our ancient wisdom with our cutting edge technology. And with these solid scientific principles, we're really committed to sharing our findings openly. So we believe in collaboration. And we hope and we wish that everyone here is going to collaborate with us, because we're eager to work with other research to accelerate our understanding. And essentially, we're searching for new ways to understand the world and ourselves as well. So we know that evidence-based research is the compass that is guiding humanity toward a brighter future. And I really firmly believe that. And by grounding decisions in rigorous data analysis, this methodology that we're using empowers us to navigate complex challenges and to unlock unprecedented opportunities for the world. We already know our evidence-based research is used in healthcare, as Gisele so eloquently shared with us earlier in her line of work. It's fascinating. And it also illuminates a pathway to conquer disease. As I just spoke about eating disorders, that's just one of many. Fei has done research on heart disease and breast cancer, and it goes on. And just also looking at a way of enhancing mental well-being. So in addition to all of that, my heart is truly in education. I'm a former educator of young people. And education, as we know, is the cornerstone of societal advancement, and it's revolutionized by evidence-based practices. So by identifying optimal teaching methods and learning environments, we can nurture the potential, I believe, of every student in this world at any age, of any walk of life, to cultivate a generation that's equipped to thrive in an ever-changing world. Our world is changing constantly. I can be brutally honest and tell you that I no longer work in the public school system industry for several reasons, and I'm not here to knock it at all. But it is a failed model that has a one-size-fits-all approach. And I firmly believe that evidence-based research astrologically, I know it sounds wild, I know it sounds crazy, but I think it has a potential to completely and totally overhaul and change the educational system into something that actually works for every student there. And I'm really incredibly excited to see if that can not just only be a potential, but to be an actuality. So that's where my heart is. That's where it goes. It goes in multiple places. But in 2022, I'm sure most of you probably already know this, but the national proficiency level of 8th graders in a public school was 26% for mathematics and 31% for language. So it's, in my eyes, it's unacceptable and a blaring moment of truth for a failed model in our educational system. And who's to say that we know the mathematics that goes into the work that we do here, that that's not going to inspire someone out there to, light some passion as it relates to mathematics or even as the world works. But I'm really passionate about using vibrational astrology specifically and our evidence-based research to develop a successful model to elicit fundamental change here. And I know I'm a dreamer, but I do believe it's possible. So this is a way, a doorway, our evidence-based research to be a catalyst for human flourishing. So by replacing assumptions with evidence, we can really build a future that's characterized by health, equity, sustainability, prosperity for all, and it's a passionate pursuit that can lead us there. The world is full of potential waiting to be actualized, as I said before, and I think that it is critically important that we move into a world of identifying processes and eliminating all of the labels that we have put on ourselves and one another. And that's all that I would like to share, just a little bit about some hopes and dreams of where this may be able to go forward and continue with the research that I'm doing to hopefully bring some change here into this world to help us all better understand one another. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Michele.
So without further ado, I would like to introduce Fei Cochrane. Fei Cochrane holds a bachelor's degree in education, and she serves as the president of Cosmic Patterns, Matrix Software, and the Avalon School of Astrology. She is also on the board of directors of the Cosmobiology Institute. Welcome, Fei.
Thank you very much, Michele. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your beautiful presentation, and so as the rest of everybody who has joined us presented the research, Santino, Chris, Paul, Glenn, Gisele and Vince, I'd like to thank all of you for sharing all of your knowledge in doing astrological research. And also, most of all, I'd like to thank everyone who has joined us for this launch of the Cosmobiology Institute. I appreciate your time for coming and everything. Some of you, it's 2 a.m. It's really late in your area, but I know this is true to your heart. That's why you came. First of all, doing research is a labor of love. You make sure that you really want to do the research for you to be able to push through and get it done. Because it's not easy, it's not simple, it's rigorous, and it requires hard work and sleepless night. So you have to be ready for all this work before you even start your research. Now, being part of the Cosmobiology Institute's mission is to help everyone in the astrological community or anyone that are not in this community who wants to join in and do this research, evidence-based research. For those of you who are not familiar with this, the Cosmobiology Institute is here to help all of you, to educate you, give free lectures, to introduce how to do this kind of research. This may be foreign to you, but this is very, very important in order to pursue this kind of work in this community. Now, I have done several research and I'm still continuing to do research because of the of my nature I am a natural healer, and at the same time I'm extremely curious. I'd like to know things, why it is happening, and I gravitate into medical astrology and medical research. Like Santino, Gisele, and Michele, I've used the same research procedures that they have used in the software that they have used, which is the Sirius program that has a really, really excellent research materials in there that you can use. You do not have to do you do not have to know mathematical formula. You just trust the program, and what is important is you love what you are doing and you're about to do. What I did all of the procedures that are explained in the bipolar book. So if you want to learn all the procedures, we have no time to explain it here, but when you purchase that bipolar book, the entire steps are there. What I did, like the rest of my research team, I did the assumption-less research. I want to make sure that I have no background of anything of what is causing it, so that this is a true research. And then I did an exploratory research. So this words may be foreign to all of you guys, but it is in the Cosmobiology Institute website with the rules and regulations in there. It is explained in there. You can download it, or we can also send you some information later. Now, after doing the assumptions-less research, I followed through with exploratory research. With exploratory research, you combine all of the people that has, I started with heart disease, that has the heart disease, and then you collect all of those people, hundreds of them, that you study. What do they have in common with and everything. After doing this exploratory research, I went on to the extreme case sampling. These are all together in one research, so that I can prove or find the astrosignature for what is causing the heart disease and the breast cancer. So heart disease and breast cancer is prominent in my family, so I gravitated on that. So with the heart disease, it was mind-boggling, and it was really, really eye-opening for me. I cannot explain it here. We have not enough time, But if you're interested, I'm happy to share you my breast cancer and heart disease research. I'll send you the link, the video of the presentation at the conference. I presented the heart disease study, which I did for more than a year in the Vibrational Astrology Conference 2022. And after that, I got really hooked. I did the breast cancer research, and that took another year. And I'm telling you, this is a hard work job, and you really have to be ready for sleepless night because it is addictive. Once you find the result, the p-value is 0.001, you can keep going and going and going, and that causes you to lose sleep. Yeah. So it's addictive. It's worse than drug. You don't have to be drunk. You don't have to do these drugs, but this is really fascinating. So make sure you're ready for this. And if you are really interested in doing this, the Cosmobiology Institute will be giving free seminars on how to do all this research, and will also be guiding you through. If you already have something done that you think maybe a cherry picking research, we can help you see if that is indeed a cherry picking research, or it can be explored into or transposed into assumptions-less research and into exploratory research, and then the extreme case sampling research. My aim at this point is to do the hypothetical research of both the breast cancer and the heart disease research. The hypothetical is the scientific way of proving that these astrosignatures really works. Right now, you can already replicate my study by following my procedure, but it has to be done hypothetically, just like the bipolar research. But I will need data. I need tons and tons of data so that it's not called cherry picking. So I'm looking for data from hospitals and everywhere that I can find it. But I'm getting, because of the HIPAA law, it's hard to find all this data. So if any of you who have anything that you can have to gather data with everything that we are doing research, please come and approach us, and we will really be very happy to get that guidance from you. And thank you all very much, and I'd like again to thank all the researchers that join us and do all these presentations, and we really appreciate all of your help.
Thank you,
Thank
Fei.
you, Fei.
Thank you.
I'd like to introduce now Rochelle Fernandes. Rochelle is a professional in the area of finance and is currently enrolled in a PhD program. She practices Jyotish, astrology, and she is also on the board of directors of the Cosmobiology Institute. Welcome, Rochelle.
Thank you, Michelle. Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see everyone here. Those who've joined, on cam and off cam. I'm really excited. So I serve the Cosmobiology Institute as the treasurer. I have an MBA in finance from Santa Clara University here. I grew up in India, in Bombay, when it was called Bombay. Currently, it's called Mumbai. And and I'm a lifelong learner, researcher, star map watcher, Jyotish. I feel very passionately about evidence-based research. And so when I saw the work that Santino was doing, I approached him because as this group was beginning, wow, was it a couple years ago now, or a year and a half back? And I volunteered as treasurer here. My goal, really, my vision for this organization is to see this organization grow its reach and its influence, to expand our research, to make it the one-stop shop, so to speak, but a one-stop where folks can come for the best data that is vetted, evidence-based, and really premier source and one stop for evidence-based studies in astrology, and not well in astrology and these these all this research that everybody is doing here, from health conditions to personality disorders and so much more. So I'm just really excited to be here, and that's my vision for what and my hopes and dreams, and yeah.
Thank you, Rochelle. We
Thank
really
you.
appreciate your help on the board. So there's been a lot of positive feedback in the chat. We are 6 minutes over, and I promised I was going to get you out of here on time, but we appreciate you staying. I hope you are all excited about this movement towards evidence-based practice in astrology, along with the further rigorous study of the how the universe of the energy of the universe affects us here on Earth. At the Cosmobiology Institute, we are looking forward to setting up quarterly online events, research committees, and other programs to develop education initiatives. We are hoping that those of you who are interested in moving these endeavors forward will take the time to visit cosmobiology.org and review our research guidelines, as well as volunteer where you feel most comfortable. There will be a quick survey after this meeting ends. Please take a moment to fill it out so that we can keep you informed on future announcements. As mentioned, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we are always looking for and accepting donations as well. Please email us your questions at info@cosmobiologyinstitute.org. You are all invited back to our next gathering on October 4th, where we will dive into the questions that you ask, and start announcing committees and projects. So please mark that on your calendar. We will be sending out more information. We will also be inviting our guest presenters back to dive deeper into their areas of expertise throughout the year. Thank you all very much for being here, and thank you so much to our presenters. This was just a short peek into your work, and it is all fascinating. I personally look forward to diving deeper into what you are all doing in the future. So thank you so much. A link to this recording will be sent over the weekend, and we will also be sending out longer biographies of our presenters and slides as we have them. Have a wonderful evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you may be. We've had people from all over the world here, Japan, Australia, lots and lots of places. It's truly an honor. Have a wonderful day, and we look forward to seeing you on October 4th and after that. Thank you so much.